Hello everyone, new lab today. It's called the solubility of potassium nitrate. Now, potassium nitrate is a chemical that's used oftentimes in fertilizers. It's used in tree stump removals. You'll find it inside of gunpowder. So those are some of the uses, economical uses of potassium nitrate. Our purposes today is to figure out what is the solubility of this material. Solubility, we have one material, that's the solute, the potassium nitrate, that is going to be dissolved in a solvent, and that's going to be water. So we're going to try to figure out how much of this material can be dissolved in a specified amount of water, 5 milliliters, at different temperatures. That's what we're going to try to figure out today. All right, so before we get too far into this, in terms of responsibilities, you need to start out with your safety equipment. You got to have your safety glasses or goggles on. You have to have the hair tied back, loose clothing secured, jewelry put away. No one should have open-toed shoes. When you're working with this, I want you on this side of the desk so that way you're away from the flame, or you could turn off the gas easily. So let's start with that gas jet. One person in the group needs to set up the ring stand. This is our ring stand right here. Why is it called a ring stand? Because on the side of this, we have what, and I'm grabbing it with the tongs because I heated this thing up. All right, this looks like a ring. Difficult to figure that one out, right? So, and then on top of that ring, you need a waffle wire mesh pad that we're going to put right on top right here, right like this. Okay, so that's the first part. You need to make sure that this is the right height above the actual burner. So with my torch, I'm going to light the torch first. My hose is already connected to the gas jet. It's snugged on there, not forcefully placed, but snugged up. I will then, when my hand is underneath the actual barrel of the burner, I'll turn on the gas and ignite the burner. Grabbing it by the base of the burner, not the top. You grab it by the top, you're leaving skin on that. That's not a good thing. You'll get burnt real fast. So by the base of the burner, we're going to place that underneath here. Now that's a perfect height for this particular burner. If we were to use what's called a Terrell burner, you'll see a different flame. You'll see two blue cones. We'd want to adjust that to be at the tip of the inner blue cone. This one, for our purposes, perfect. So I'm going to get that out from underneath there by grabbing the base of the burner and moving it aside like this. The other thing that you're going to have to set up is a hot water bath. So you need, now I'm grabbing it with my hot pad holder because I've already heated this beaker up to save some time. We want to use a 600 milliliter beaker. We want to fill it up to about 400 milliliters worth of water. And then we're going to place that right on top of my wire mesh on the ring stand. And we're going to start heating this. Now, since we're heating a beaker of water that's raised up off the surface of the table, I don't want anyone sitting down at all. Right? The worst thing that could ever happen is if you're sitting down, somebody comes by and bumps this, it's going to fall and it's going to be at face level. All right? If somebody comes by and bumps this and I'm standing, then I can move away quickly. If you are sitting in a chair and it bumps over, it's going to be very bad. All right? So we're going to start heating this up. Now, once you have that started heating, you're going to take an empty test tube and you're going to put 5 milliliters of water in this test tube. So the 5 milliliters, you'll use your graduated cylinder, and you should have a secondary stock beaker of water. It will pour approximately 4 milliliters of water in here. And then using my eyedropper, I will place this on the table, look at it at eye level, and then I'm going to add slowly water until the meniscus, the bottom of that curved line, is at the 5 milliliter mark. Once that is at the 5 milliliter mark, I know I have exactly 5 milliliters of water, I'll transfer that into my test tube. So, you're not done yet. This person needs to get the test tube clamp all set up and ready to go. So on the test tube clamp, this part right here is going to actually attach to the stand itself. You'll have another screw right here, and that adjusts how this thing rotates. All right, so I'm going to snug this up to where it is pointing up and down. And then we're going to place our test tube in here. We're just going to snug this up just a little bit. Okay. Now what I want to do is just make sure, ooh, that could have been bad. All right. So all I want to do, I don't want to heat this thing just yet. I just want to make sure that this is adjusted properly. Now, anytime you're working over top of this, you need to remove the heat source. Okay, so I remove that. I'm going to place this in here. And how I have this set up right now is not a good situation. Why is that? Because my test tube is pointing towards me, and if I'm heating it up, and if liquids start to boil and start to splatter outwards, that's coming at me instead of away from me. So what I'll do is I'll just adjust my screw to point the other direction. All right. Now, with it pointing in the right direction, I can see that it will fit into my beaker just fine. Perfect. Okay, now notice when I do this, you'll see this. I don't have glass touching glass. It's sitting in the hot water bath, not on the bottom of the beaker. So I'm going to place this in my stand. This person, whoever's doing this, your responsibility stops at this particular moment. The other person in the group, what you have to do is, while the first person's getting this all set up, what you have to do is you have to get an empty beaker, and you need to get the mass of that empty beaker. All right? Remember what that mass of that empty beaker is. Because in this group over here on the left-hand side of the room, what you have to measure out is, let me get to it, you have to measure out 2 grams of potassium nitrate. So that 2 grams, in order to get exactly 2 grams of material, you need to know what the mass of your empty beaker is. All right, the mass of this empty beaker right here, I moved my 100-gram rider over first, and it dropped, so the beaker weighs less than 100 grams. Then I moved my 10-gram rider over until it dropped, and I backed it up 1. Then I moved my 1-gram rider until it is zeroed out. That tells me the mass of my empty beaker. What you have to do is, from a small container of potassium nitrate that I will give you, you're going to use a chemical scoop, and you're going to transfer chemicals into that empty beaker. Now, how do you know when you have exactly 2 grams? Well, if I know the mass of my empty beaker, and the mass of this is 49.6. Right, now, if the mass of that empty beaker is 49.600, I need to adjust this to be 2 grams greater than that. So if it's 49.6, I need to adjust this to be 51.6. All right, so the arm of this is down because it's heavier than what the empty beaker is. What I'll do is I'll use my chemical scoop, and I'm going to transfer chemicals into the empty beaker until the arm of that comes back up. Now see, I put too much in there, didn't I? Right? So that's where patience would come into play. Now if that happens, what you do is you take the chemical scoop and you remove some of that material until, try not to make a mess like that, until it reaches 0. So this still has a little bit more than what I'd want. So I'll just continue back and forth until I get the desired amount. So let's pretend that that's exactly 2 grams. All right? So the 2 grams, what we'll do is we will transfer that to the 5 milliliters of water that your partner had already put into the test tube. We'll transfer that in, carefully making sure we don't spill anything. And we're just going to give that a gentle stir. Stirring rods are in the bottom desk drawer, and this particular one has what's called a rubber policeman on the end of it. Now, the rubber policeman, it's kind of like a little spatula to help prevent glass on glass contact, because what you want to avoid is the glass stirring rod slamming into the side of your test tube, because you're going to crack it and then you're going to ruin your lab. So what we'll do is we'll just give this a gentle stir, okay? And what we would like to have happen is all 2 grams of this potassium nitrate needs to be dissolved in that 5 milliliters. All right, so we'll put this in to my hot water bath. Okay, carefully lowering that. I'm going to put that down just a little bit more. Now notice the heat is not underneath there as I'm working on this. Everything is set up. I should tilt that just a little bit more away from me because I don't want it pointing at me. There we go. So we're going to heat this up. I'll fast forward it when this is fully dissolved. Okay, at this point, all of the crystals have dissolved in that 5 milliliters of water. We're going to turn off our gas. We're going to remove the gas from underneath, and I'm going to take my thermometer and place it into my test tube. What we want to do is carefully remove our test tube from the actual ring and place it into our test tube rack. All right, now you have to be careful of this because this is going to be fairly warm, so you want to be careful to make sure that this is not too hot to the touch. All right, on the back side, I'm not grabbing this, I'm grabbing it on the back side. I'm just going to loosen this up. We'll transfer this over to the test tube rack, and then if it is okay to touch, we'll remove the test tube from the actual tom, or from the test tube clamp. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're watching this carefully. Now the 2 gram group, this isn't going to be very hot. Now if you're the 8 gram group, people, do not touch this test tube. It's going to be pretty warm. All right, so we're going to watch this and we're going to make sure that we keep our eye on it. And the very instant that I start seeing little crystals forming at the bottom, I want to record that temperature. All right? That temperature is the thing that we're looking for in this lab. Now, the 2 gram group people, you're going to benefit because it's going to dissolve very rapidly. And you're going to notice that as I was heating that, occasionally I would stir it because that's one of the things that can increase the rate at which it's dissolving. You're introducing fresh solvent onto the sides of all that solute. But we don't want to agitate this too much once it is in this state. Every so often you can pick up your thermometer and just verify if there's any crystals at the bottom. So I'm going to leave this here. Again, the 2 gram group people, it will dissolve rapidly, but then you have to be patient and wait for it to recrystallize. While we're waiting for that to recrystallize, we're going to take the hot pad holder. Grabbing it by the top, we're going to place that onto the tabletop so that way if anything were to happen, we were to bump that, we don't have hot water going all over the place. So eventually what's going to happen is we're going to have crystals that will reform, and I've done a couple of examples here and I'll show you what that will look like close up in just a moment. All right. If you have any questions or concerns, make sure that you ask, but before you do the lab, you've got to make sure that you have answered the pre-lab questions on the quiz. All right? Hope you have fun and learned something from the lab.